Hello, people of Earth. This is Tesko with Rip Kenny and Trap Jesus, and you're listening to the Human Music Podcast. Woo!
Human Music Podcast. I like it. Hey, what's up, humans? Human Music Podcast back at you one more again. We got Rip Kenny and Tesko with me. I'm Trap Jesus. How was your guys' weekend?
Fucking lit.
Rave horns.
It's pretty good.
Rave horns abound. It was good, man. Took actually a little bit of time off from working on music 100% straight. And then felt guilty about it. So
Me too, man.
That's
Me
how it
too. I
goes.
took a little break. Oh, it's my friend's birthday. We're getting a little Airbnb, gonna smoke some weed, and then 2 days go by without me building anything for music. And it's like, oh shit. I mean, I had fun. I had a blast about some of my friends, but there's that voice in the back of my mind always like, oh yeah. Remember what you were supposed to be doing?
Yeah, have you guys found a way to like come to peace with that, or do you feel like every time you chillax you feel some level of guilt? Because I'm like, I don't know if there's going back to regular human mode for me at this point.
It's interesting because if I'm doing something that is an experience, I don't feel like that, right? Like the weekend, was that last weekend or before? It was June 20th, so that was the weekend before last. I went up to Mount Hood for like this solstice party where you like fucking hike up the mountain and then everyone fucking hangs out on the snow at like 10,000 feet and parties and then skis down and like that kind of thing. Like that's an experience. Like I remember that shit like that. Those are the kinds of things that like stick with me in a positive way when I go to write music. Like the diversity of input results in a diversity of output through the creative work. It's the days where you don't have anything planned and you kind of just hang out and you were going to do this, but you didn't really feel like it, or the plans kind of fell through. And you end up just like fucking doing nothing. Really? Like really doing nothing? Like you might have like watched TV or like done yard work or something, but like those are the days that fucking grind my conscience for like, why didn't you do anything productive? You could, I just watched you sit there for fucking 3 hours. Piece of shit. I hate you.
I love how you phrase it in third person too. I just watched you, human suit, meat
Exactly.
suit. You useless meat suit.
Control of your fucking ape, says my conscience. and is very angry that I wasn't able to do that or see far enough in advance to realize that I should have prioritized that time differently. But
yeah,
I do think it is really important not to just pigeonhole yourself into music all the time. I mean, if you're doing something that's like a consistent output, like say you were like, you had to make 2 beats a day to like sustain a living on like making hip hop beats. Like I get that. Like you can, like if you had a process down, you could crank that out. But like if you're trying to come up with like interesting creative output, I think you have to have a diversity of inputs just to like re-trigger different ways of your brain, like firing impulses and like thinking of things differently, you know?
I 1000% agree with that, but also on the converse, I think of like, did Kobe need a diverse input of experiences to be one of the best players in the world, or whoever?
I'm talking about a creative output.
But you could still argue that, if you put in more...
Practicing your jump shot, getting in your repetitions with your jump shot is similar but not the same to creative. Like practicing your jump shot is making serum patches. If you're really good at making serum patches but completely fucking uninspired and feel trapped by your own surroundings, you're probably not going to have the happiness and dopamine to be interested in the work that you're doing to result in a good creative output?
Yeah, I guess I personally have like trouble coming to terms with that because I always still feel like you said, like I 100% agree, like the creative aspect and like getting serum patches in is more similar to like, you know, hitting free throws than creating something. But even still, I always like rationalize it in the sense of like, well, what if that one serum patch is exactly what you need to inspire you? And I'm definitely not devaluing like being a proper, well-rounded human being. But I'm also like, I personally feel crushed sometimes under this weight. And I like it. I invite the feeling because I'd rather have it than not have it. But something I struggle with is like always, I don't even know if it's struggle. Like I'm having trouble picking my words here because I don't know how to properly connotate like how it feels. But I'm always like, if I could just sacrifice that one more thing, you know, to give myself this extra like 30 minutes to fit this in, or if I could like cut this one thing out of my life and like prioritize music that 1% more, 0.1% more, like, you know, I want to get to that point where I'm eventually like renowned for something, but it's also like I feel like my rest days at this point are totally unplanned, and it's just like after an hour or two of me being absolutely useless, I'm just like, all right, I guess this is a rest day today, you know?
Well, what I'm saying is that like that day, you could have used that day to go do.
I could have.
Interesting. And then that experience of like full fucking burnout to the point where you can't even do the thing that you wanted to do doesn't really happen.
Yeah. So that is where I sort of struggle because I lose that hour or two of watching my human meat suit be absolutely useless before I realize like, this is my off day, you know?
You realize
versus
the breaking point.
Yes, because if I have it in me that day, then I could do anything.
Yeah.
And I'll feel guilty for not putting in the time into my passion, right? So I don't know. What a weird little dilemma I face.
I mean,
shouts to all of us for actually getting to a spot in our own lives and our own careers where instead of the discussion being like, damn, can I just like squeeze a whole music day into my week? It's like, damn, I think to not die, I should squeeze one non-music day into one of these weeks this month.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell a lot of my students. They're like, yeah, you know, I'm just trying to find some more days for music. I'm like, nah, man, you got to get on like Spiderhound said, that 10 minutes a day challenge and get that rolling so you can do something every day and get to the point where you got to be like, okay, I've done this so many days and I've made so much progress and I'm actually exhausted because I've been doing what I said I wanted to do. Now, that's when you got to start planning in those break days for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like I haven't lost that perspective completely, but sometimes I forget that people live differently. And so when people ask me like, yeah, like how do I schedule more time for music? Like I always tell them do the Spiderhound thing, but then I realize like, holy shit, I'm so far off the deep end that I'm like thinking the total opposite way. Like, how do I shut my mind up for like 15 minutes to read a book or whatever? If it's not music or business related, like especially reading a fiction book or something. Oh man.
Yeah, no, I feel it. I actually watched a TED Talk this morning, like directly on not this topic, but like a very similar concept that actually hit pretty hard for me. Let's see if I can find what it was called. Yes, I can, because it is right here. Sean Achor, Achor, The Happy Secret to Better Work. So this guy is like a psychologist and has researched essentially like productivity as it relates to people's happiness and self-worth. And what he found is that we have created a society where, and you need to watch this TED Talk because it's fucking great.
Links in the description.
Yeah, links in the description. We've created a society where happiness is past the horizon of success. So what that means is your goal, your sales number that you have to reach, your thing to achieve, once you achieve it, you set the next goal that has moved further. Your sales target, you hit your sales target, great job. We're going to make that bigger because you need to improve, and I think you could do it. And it's like a natural inclination of us to continue to move the goalpost forward for success. But since we have tied our happiness to the result of that success, we've essentially made it a carrot and a stick relationship in which we will never actually get the carrot of happiness because we have tied that to success, which is the next goal, right? So essentially, and he related it back to a business perspective, your employees, when they are happy and their brains are producing dopamine, the science shows that person is 30% better able to problem solve, 20% better able to deal with people. And they have basically shown that like people's success in a job scenario is 25% how smart they are and 75% how positive they deal with people, how other people view the relationship they have with them. It's like if the person is happy and energized and wants to be there, that person, regardless of how smart they are, 75% chance that they're going to be very successful. And so basically what he's saying is that you need to reverse engineer the way that you establish your goal system, your daily setup, to first focus on positivity, like creating an environment where there's like positive self-talk, that you're writing what you're grateful for, you're journaling, you're spreading positivity to others. I think that's actually probably why I texted you guys.
Hell yeah.
I appreciate you, even though I do, and I tell you guys that like all the fucking time. Like, you know, it's just one of those things like, fuck, I need to tell those guys I appreciate them because I really fucking do. And this was a good reminder. You know, it's like...
Likewise, homie.
Yeah.
We appreciate your appreciation.
Yes. That is a positivity appreciation infinite loop.
Yes.
And so if you start with that in mind and you start with the positivity, that energizes you to then do better work, which then actually feeds the thing that you wanted to do, which was be successful. And then it's just like a way better way to approach this whole loop of bettering yourself. And I just fucking found that so fascinating because I myself am guilty of doing that the wrong way. Like always hedonistic adaptation of the thing that you just did. You just made a great song. It got released. Some of your friends were like, oh, this is a great song. I like it. Cool. That's done. I don't feel good about that anymore. How do I make the next fucking amazing thing? Like, hold the fuck on. Like, why? Just you need to be happy with the things that you have done and be happy with the relationships that you have and the system that you have built for yourself in which you can function and thrive in. Like, there are so many things to be positive about on a daily basis, but our ape brain just wants to go, oh, you haven't done X thing that you said you were going to do or whatever. You know, like, it's just so easy to get caught up in the next thing and fucking forget that actually going the opposite way would get you to that next thing faster, right?
Yeah. And so, like, I think that this all kind of points to the reminder to, yes, of course, we got to set goals. And, you know, we want to set them in a way where they build off each other and we can continue to get things done. But to remember that the satisfaction of doing what we do is way more sustainable if we find it in the process instead of just in the result that we're going for. Like, if you only want the song out, but you don't enjoy making it, most of your time is going to suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And not to keep bringing it back to me, but I think that is what makes it so hard to step away, is that I like the process more than everything else. Like, I'll actively try to take up new hobbies, but it's just like, I don't know what it is about sitting in your dark music dungeon, putting sounds together that is just so captivating. Like it's like entrancing. It puts you in this like very like creative flow state. And I think flow state, regardless of what you do, whether it's music, whether it's, I don't know, bird watching, or whether it's sewing or whatever, that flow state is, I think, the true happiness to human beings when we're creating. I think we touched up on this in that DMT episode, but that act of creation, you could argue, is like as close as we could get to God, or the idea of God, or, you know, it's the best way to pay homage to this idea of God, the all creator, whatever way you want to believe in that complex idea. But flow state in general, and like finding ways to optimize flow state, I think is the most satisfying feeling. And then what you said too, Evan, like being grateful for that and then being able to like step away for a while. I think if you could optimize getting yourself into a flow state and coming up with a routine where you could consistently do that, and then also schedule days to not be a one-dimensional human being, that's the peak of life. Screw the money, screw all the like superficial materialistic stuff. That's like, those are the best experiences you could have, I think, in this life.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's funny because in my past life, like I raced downhill mountain bikes for like 12 years, and my first addiction to flow state came from doing that, actually. You know, like it is very much the same in a very different way. Like when you're flowing working on a song versus when you're flowing riding down a trail, like the stranglehold of how fun and intrinsically motivating that has on your brain is just the same. It just presents itself in a different way. And I do think that it is fair to say that, like you're saying, you've tried to do other hobbies and it doesn't satisfy you the same way. I would say that the only reason that I do get pulled away to this other stuff is because they kind of came from a past life before I jumped into making music all the fucking time. And now like doing those things that also have triggered that same thing in my brain in the past are like a great way to train my brain to get into that state in a different way so that I can come back to music and get into that state. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I want to make a distinction here, because I do appreciate other hobbies, and I've found over the years it's been things like weightlifting or jujitsu that give me that same feeling, much like mountain biking probably does for you, where it's like you have to focus at the task at hand. It's almost meditative in the sense that it pushes out all of these other thoughts from your head, and you are absolutely present in the moment. Because if you're thinking about Ableton racks while you're like just about to stick the landing to this thing, you are screwed. Yeah. You're gonna fuck your shit up, to put it lightly. So yeah, when it's just like mindless activities and you're left to your own thoughts, and I know this is such a nuanced, complex discussion, but like I think a lot of times depression comes from not being in motion. And there's this one quote I like, which I'll probably butcher, but it was talking about in reference to like the Buddhist quote, which is commonly taken out of context of like existence is suffering or whatever. But he's like, the dude that said it, he's like, yeah, that's true. Like, if you don't believe me, go lock yourself in your room for 3 days straight and be alone with your thoughts. It is fucking miserable. Even in prisons where you're around like the worst people, the biggest punishment they could give you is isolation. So I think that speaks a lot on our minds, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I think it was funny because like the first time I watched the ill methodology, which is the thing that brought me to the dojo in the first place, the thing that he was talking about, like when you're making music, you should be like the warrior with the sword that is not thinking about how to react, but just reacting. And that was just like, holy fuck, like that is how I feel when I'm in flow state riding my downhill mountain bike. And I hadn't really experienced that as much working on music, maybe in like short stints, but that was like a huge trigger, like, holy fuck, like I am by far the best mountain biker that I could ever be when I'm in that state when I'm riding mountain bikes. How do I get myself to that when I'm writing music? And that is the all important, turn your phone off, throw it across the room, fucking turn all your notifications off. Like stop letting yourself be distracted by anything else and actually let yourself get into flow state. And that's still always how the best stuff that I write gets written.
Yeah, that
100%.
seems to be a hallmark of flow state, is like that place that you choose to put yourself in where it's so like the consequences of distraction are so high. Like I used to ski, you're talking about downhill mountain bike racing, and there's so many other like physical feats that people put themselves in. Like you mentioned jujitsu, Tesko. Like if you're thinking about anything but how to not get choked, you're about to get choked. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking anything but like what does the next, couple of turns on this bike really got to do, and where does this front tire need to go so that I don't end up flying down the mountain without that bike? Like you're fucked if you don't stay in this moment, in this exact task at hand. And, that might be a reason why it's a little more elusive to get into that flow state with music, because so much of our time is there's no consequences. There's no dire circumstance that we're in when we're just chilling in the studio. Like, it's probably different. It's different on stage sometimes. We've made that. We talked about on the Unk episode about that, where it's like if you're playing for like 9 people in an empty club, it's really easy to mess up on the DJ gear. But like all of a sudden when the house is packed and everybody's going crazy, it's just like you are so dialed in that those are the times you don't make any mistakes.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I hadn't thought about that because the stakes of distraction are so low when you're sitting at your computer. You let your guard down. You leave Facebook open in the background. You have Slack with notifications turned on, and then all of a sudden you hear that little ding, and you don't think it's a big deal. You're like, oh, someone hit me up. Like I got to check what's going on. And then they're like, oh, hey, can you send me this thing? And you're like, oh yeah, it'll take me 30 seconds. And then you can't find it, or the file got deleted, and then you got to like do something else that takes 15 minutes. And then when you come back, you're like, oh, that didn't really hurt me that much. And then it did, though, because how long did it take you to get back into like, okay, what was I doing? Like what was the train of thought? Like that shit takes much longer to get back into than you think.
You realize you could go for a snack. You like totally get sidetracked.
Anything else. You're like, right, I was in this very high concentration, high focus period of working on something. Your brain goes, that's actually a pretty high barrier to entry. You should probably just go grab a snack or take a piss or grab some water or do anything else than go.
Ooh, what's on Netflix?
Yeah. Like what else could I do that's like halfway back to doing what I was doing that your brain can negotiate with your ape that is a better idea because you know how much energy it expends to get into that state. It's so funny.
Yeah. And what you're talking about, it's like there's this term attention residue. Like every time you have to switch attention to a new task, the old task holds on to part of your attention and like, sticks on like a residue. And then you're not really focused on the next thing you're doing because you're still thinking about how you got to get back to the other thing. And so it takes longer. And then you switch back again. And now that old thing is hooked onto you while you're trying to get back to your song. So yeah, that advice of taking your phone, turning it off, turning all your notifications off, putting it across the room, in the other room, anything that you can do to not dive back into the matrix.
Yeah.
Speaking of attention residue, there's a way to use that to your benefit also, I think. And that's why I really like what Sean Spiderhound talked about in his episode about, 10 minutes a day type thing. The things that you're doing consistently every day are leaving behind attention residue. And if you can do 10 minutes of music a day or more, but at least 10 minutes, it will leave behind residue that will eventually accumulate, like resin in a bong, if you will, or whatever.
Like
right?
the snowball effect if you're not a stoner.
Right. You get all these little snowflakes that fall on top of each other. And at first, it just looks like one snowflake. It's like almost indistinguishable when 3 snowflakes are on top of each other versus that transition to a pile of snow into a snowball or whatever. But that attention residue eventually builds up to the point where you're not even conscious about it. You're not expending any mental energy, but it's as if like you have enough of that residue tapped into that creative source that when you are showering, when you are driving to work, when you are doing whatever, you'll get this idea of like, oh, it'll just come to you fully thought out. You'll just be like, oh my God, I could make this like effects rack, or I could save this preset, or I could do, oh my God, I just thought of a new way to like do this sick thing on my drums to give them more articulation or whatever, insert nerdy producer thing there. And that's like anything you're doing in life. Like, I'm sure if you're doing construction, you'll think of a better way to like organize your tools or like create this thing that you had in mind. And so I think that concept of doing things consistently and building up that attention residue is so powerful because it actually gives you this separate, but equally important method of problem solving that is not active at all. And it assists you during your active flow state sessions. You're going to get these gems of ideas that you wouldn't have got in that active mental state.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for
Dude,
it.
I feel you, man. Like that is such a, I love how you just flip that, taking the the concept of attention residue that's this like negative when you try and switch back and forth between things. But if every day of your entire life you have to switch to music at some point, that does build up. And I've noticed that since I went from, I'll try to get a couple of days on music this week to I'm going to do music every day this week. The amount of times that I've had that dope inspiration or that figure out how to solve the problem or that melody comes into my head from 2 weeks ago that I thought I had forgot or whatever, like those moments seem to happen so much more because my mind has to be in music every day. And it's weird to not think about music every day. It's like, it's completely come full circle.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's like it's really a testament to the power of your subconscious to problem solve when you take your conscious thought and put it on something else. That's like that always happens to me in like the 20 minutes before I fall asleep at night. If I have something I've been like really focusing on and then I like lie down and go to sleep and I stop thinking about it, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot all day. My brain's like, hey, all those things that like you were letting get in the way of you solving the problem. Yeah, well, those are gone now. Here's the solution. Like, yes, oh, fuck. Oh, I got to get out of bed and write this down. Like you're basically what you were talking about by working on music daily. You're forcing your subconscious thought to be focused on that concept, on music, on the thing that you want your subconscious mind to be focusing on. Back when I was consumed by my project management job in construction, my subconscious thought was fully consumed by how to solve the problems in my work that I didn't give a fuck about. Like I gave a fuck about it because it paid the bills. But realistically, I wish I could have thought about it zero. But all the epiphanies that I had during that period of my life were like, fucking stressed out trying to get these jobs to work, were all about how to fix things that were wrong in that thing, because all of my attention residue was coming from that thing. Now, when you flip it and you force yourself to be in music, like you were saying, thinking about this every day, it allows you to have the subconscious bandwidth to solve the problems that you actually want to fucking solve with your subconscious, because it is so powerful. Like, let your brain do the thinking that you don't have to consciously work through. There's so much power in that.
Yeah, building that base code of what you really want to pay attention to by doing it every single day.
Yeah. And I feel like it's useful for different reasons too. Like, you'll solve different types of problems that way, or you'll recognize different types of problems. It's like this serendipitous, instantaneous sort of like sometimes fully fleshed out thoughts or ideas that just sort of abstractly come to you. I also really like this like modern idea of your mental diet, and like just being hyper aware about the things that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis. Like, it might not seem like a big deal to see a CBC article every day about some crime that happened in your city or whatever. And I'm not saying totally tune out of the news and not know what's going on, but be very selective. Like, do you need to know that 400 people got laid off today? And it's like, well, in some cases, maybe if you are investing in that company, or maybe if it's like somebody in your family, but like realistically, 99% of the news is not relevant to us. And if we didn't know it, our lives would have continued on the exact same way. Also, if you, on the converse, even like innocent seeming stuff like, I don't know what's relevant, Farmville invites or whatever on social media, like any like extraneous shit that is just not going to bring you any value, any apps on your phone that you don't need to be looking at, any clutter in your house that you don't need to be seeing, like all of that stuff weighs you down and also builds up that residue. I think it's super important to be thinking about it in that manner, and not to underestimate how much power some of these little things actually have in influencing our subconscious.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's actually something that TED Talk that I was mentioning earlier that was super powerful was mentioning. It's like your happiness is somewhat also based on the inputs that you're giving yourself. And if you watch the news that is fear-mongering every day, you're going to start to believe that everything about the world is shit. And if you believe everything about the world is shit, then why does it matter what you do? There are a lot of fucking shitty parts about the world. Yeah, we all know that. We've seen that very much firsthand recently. But spending time to fix those in the ways that you can is good regardless, and not diving into all of the stuff that you cannot fucking fix. Like you were saying, like there's a lot of stuff that you can be informed on and help and make positive change for, but there's a lot of stuff that fucking like you're just watching and like, oh my God, like the world sucks ass. Like that stuff does weigh on you too. And it's the news's job to make you feel like you have to watch the news because you're afraid of all of the shit that's happening. That's like their fucking shtick. That's how they get you to watch. Like understanding that and understanding that you need to consciously filter your inputs to avoid that problem that you were just talking about. Super important.
Yeah, curation is what I like to call that. You know, it's like if you got, I mean, down to, you know, your Facebook acquaintances. Like when it's a real friend, that's one thing. But there's so many people we have on our feeds that we met at that one thing that one time and never saw again, but became Facebook friends for some reason. And I've gone through my Facebook friends, list, or even just going through the timeline every once in a while. I'll be like, who don't I actually know? And what are they actually saying? Like, I don't remember who you are, but you're complaining every time I see you. And it's not even about stuff that's like relevant or helpful. It's just like your tiny little thing that was bad today. And it was like, yeah, okay, good luck complaining about everything, person I don't know. I'm not going to look at it anymore. And just start to pull these things off your timelines. And like you said, take apps off your phone if they just send you notifications that you never want to check. Like, you're allowed. Like, people get mad at their phone. Oh, my phone's always bothering me. I was like, the thing has an off switch and all these options to let you know, like, give you control over what it shows you. But if you don't use those options, then that's on you.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, people are always like overwhelmed by how many emails they get or whatever. You gotta unsubscribe from shit that you don't want to get, dude. Like, everyone, like, if you just ignore it or delete it, like, no. Like, if you have gotten 3 emails from this person and you haven't opened a single one or deemed it important at all, like, you should strongly consider unsubscribing. And if you get 10, motherfucker, you have to unsubscribe from that shit, because the inbox that you need is stuff that you actually want to read and pay attention to. Otherwise, you're just cluttering up your own mind with allowing yourself to see a bunch of shit that's going to distract you.
100%. A good analogy is thinking about what our bodies are and thinking about how we have bacteria in our bodies that are constantly trying to eat away at us, that our body is fighting back with and sometimes harmoniously working with. But these are the same bacteria that start to like decompose our bodies once we give up the good fight. Now, everything in life is this proactive fight, and it's as if you're standing on a treadmill, and if you become totally stationary, you're actually going to start getting moved back slowly. And if you have to take a break here and there for whatever reason, because life does get hard sometimes, it's okay to go back a little, but you can't fool yourself and think that if you stay stationary for too long or aren't proactive about disabling notifications, you aren't proactive about protecting your attention, you aren't proactive about putting in those 10 minutes a day, you're not staying at a standstill. You're actually making negative progress. But, and this works in both directions, if you're putting in that 10 minutes, those 10 minutes every single day are going to get more valuable. If you're going to the gym and weightlifting, for example, each of those sessions is going to become more valuable because it's building upon the previous. It goes up in this exponential sort of rate, and it spirals out into either great success, or if you stay too still on that treadmill of life for too long, it will spiral out into negative success, negative whatever, and you'll find yourself in this really, really deep hole, because very rarely do things ever go slightly wrong, or very rarely do things ever slightly distract you. Like you said, you see that Slack message, you reply to it, you can't find the files, now you realize you're hungry, but you're not actually like hungry, but like you go for a snack, and then like, well, I'm at the bathroom, I just realized I got to take a piss, and then like, oh, let me hug my girl, she's looking cute, and then you like get in a conversation, and then like you get back, and then you like kick your feet up on the table, and you're like, yeah, I guess I'll like make a rack or something, and then like you're just like going through the motions, and then like that thing on your phone goes off, and it's like now you can't even give yourself that 20 minutes undistracted time to like ignore that notification on your phone. Like you slipped up and you took the phone from the other room, and now it's in your studio on your desk, and everything just becomes that much less productive. You have to be on the offense about these things.
Yeah, I love how this episode has turned into kind of like a productivity hack episode. This is like something that I've borderline obsess about nowadays, where I have the time to try and be as productive as possible, and it is still surprisingly fucking hard to be at what I feel is 100% productive. And so it's like something that we're all constantly striving to get better at. If y'all have any productivity talk tips that we haven't talked about, like drop a comment, because I want to know that shit, because I can't get enough fucking tips on how to schedule my time, how to think about things in a more efficient way, how to be more productive. I'm not borderline. I am obsessed with that shit. So let us know.
This is definitely going to be an ongoing conversation, because not only is it helpful for you humans, the listeners, it's very helpful for us humans, the hosts, to keep thinking about this, because having creativity is great, but without this like machine built of productivity and timing and scheduling and and how much to rest and all this, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can be the most creative individual ever, but if your output is low, there's no way to be prolific. To that, checking the SoundCloud inbox this week, saw the homie K-Fish put up a question for us in our inbox. He said he'd love it if we could talk in more detail about how we organize our time on a daily and weekly basis. Specifically, how do we balance making new stuff versus finishing tracks and doing tangential things such as sound design, watching tutorials, etc. He's been trying to commit to doing a few timer beats every week, but still trying to find the right balance so he's also actually finishing tracks and learning new stuff.
Which one of you told K-Fish what we'd be talking about today? Shout out K-Fish for the most relevant question that we didn't know what we were talking about yet ever.
For real.
Yeah, for real. Okay, so let's start from the easy stuff. So the tangential things, sound design, making melodies, working on building yourself racks or patches. That's all of the stuff that you do after dinner, but before you go to bed, when you're able to wrangle your ape away from watching Netflix or any of the other things that feel like would be easier to do before you go to bed. Take that hour, take that 30 minutes, whatever it is, while you're brushing your teeth, make a serum preset. And you might get some toothpaste all over yourself if you're doing it for that long. It takes me about like 10 or 15 to make a good preset. Anyways, the things that you do at night when you don't have a plethora of time, whether it be an hour, 2 hours, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, that's when you make presets. That's when you make racks. Some of my favorite things that I've ever made that inspired songs were like a preset that I made on a Friday night, and I sat down Saturday and I wrote a song, or a chord progression that I wrote Friday night in 10 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I have to write a whole song out of this tomorrow. But those are the types of things that you want to do at night. Now, when you have, maybe between 2 and 4 hours or 1 to 2 hours, that's when I would say work on finishing music. Take that chunk of time that isn't so short that you want to be able to just finish a quick thing. You want to be able to get into the flow of like, what's the bigger picture of this mix? Make sure that, all the decisions that I'm making are coherent. And so that's, I think, kind of things that I like to do when I have like, between 1 and 4 hours. If you got more than 4 hours, turn your phone off if you can. Just turn your goddamn phone off. Turn your notifications off. Unplug your Wi-Fi. Like, legit unplug that shit. Yeah, I don't want any distractions for you. And take that 4+ hours of time and write new music. What do you guys think?
Love it.
Man, I think one good thing to add to that, like, absolutely those shorter sessions, ill.Gates in the ill methodology that we referenced earlier speaks on having those daytime and nighttime sessions. Like, you got all day, write some new shit. You got a few hours at night between dinner and bedtime, like, do little things, those sound design sessions, making mud pies, making instrument racks, building the tools that will help you move faster on writing day, watching tutorials and taking notes. But within that, I feel that for me, something that works really well is to have like a focus for the season, and not necessarily like a 3-month season, but like, right now I feel one of my weak points that I really want to shore up is sound design. So for the next month, I'm really going to focus on making serum patches over and over and watching tutorials about making serum patches. And that's going to be my main thing. And yes, some of the time I'm going to do a mud pie out of that serum patch, and some of the time I'm not. And some of the time I'm also going to be writing new songs. But my main thing I'm going to focus on is serum patches. And, for me this year, I've had a couple where, one of my main things was going and using my new mixing techniques and template to go back to songs I really liked that I wrote, a year or two ago that the mix wasn't that good on. And so I was really focused on, let me just shore up old songs into newer sounding songs. And I spent like a month and a half really focused on that. And there's been other times this week where it's like, okay, I really want to focus on learning video editing skills. So let me just get as many excuses as possible to get into Premiere Pro this month, to make sure that I move that thing forward a significant chunk of skill level, have a significant amount of level ups with this one thing. Because just like with anything, if you're spreading yourself too thin and trying to go in too many directions at once, none of those are going to make any significant progress, and it can get discouraging, or progress, pardon me. And the process can get discouraging if nothing makes progress. So, we got to start songs. Yeah, we got to finish songs. Yeah, we got to sound design. Yeah, we got to watch tutorials. There can be so many parts of being a music producer that it can be very hectic and bog you down. So just choosing like, okay, there's a million things I can do to be better at being a producer. This month, I'm focused on these two, and I'll write a few songs.
I love that you mentioned like separating that further into individual focuses for each of those areas, because that's like how I got good at sound design. Was literally a year where like if I had 15 minutes, I didn't do anything else but make a serum preset. It was like what that 15 minutes, if I had 15 minutes of time before bed, anytime I had 15 minutes, it was make a serum preset. I had to make at least one a day. It's like my 10 minutes a day was just making serum presets. The same thing with like writing chords or like anything like that. Like it does really help to kind of try and focus that time a little bit more specifically. It is good to note though that even knowing all of this, I still for sure have more unfinished songs that I know need to be finished than I do have willpower to finish them on a day where I have enough time to maybe finish 2 of them. I'm going to sit down and write something new. Yeah, it's still a work in progress on how to get that timing dialed in. And I know for a fact that I need to take one of these Saturdays that I set aside for writing sometime in the near future and just try and hammer out the finishing details on 3 tracks or something like that. But man, it is hard. So don't feel bad if you don't have it perfect yet. It's going to take some time. Even all of us are still working on it.
What's perfect even, man? I'm sure the biggest, most successful dudes and ladies in our industry are sitting there thinking like, man, but if I could only be 10% more productive though. If I could only focus.
You got to have, arguably. I think that's what keeps you striving for better. And I think being able to separate that, there's something like Dylan said, it was maybe in the ill methodology, but that idea of like shutting off your phone, unplugging your internet, I love that, Evan, I think is very powerful, because you have to come to terms with the fact that you already have everything within you that you need to make a great song right now, without that next tutorial, without that next serum preset. But you can increase your chances of actually getting all of those variables right in a pleasing way the more you know. that being said, I think all of these different aspects of production, like sound design or even arrangement, like in the pop world especially, you have like multiple people in a room to collaborate on lyrics and arrangement and sound design and all these things, and realizing that in the professional ranks, there are people that specialize in just one aspect of the process. And so really being honest with yourself and asking yourself, am I interested in actually becoming like a creative artist, or do I want to be a sound designer and be mainly a sound designer for either music or for movies or for whatever, or am I more interested in this aspect or that, and making that your priority? I would say though, if you feel inspiration to write, shut everything else out. You don't need resources. If that inspiration comes, if you're in a sound design binge, whatever, follow that through and see where it takes you. But like you guys said, having one focus at a time. I talked earlier, when you push in one direction, things go exponentially. Don't do sound design one day and drums the next and arrangement the next. Like, pick a topic and you will exponentially increase at that the longer the amount of time you put into it, because you could spread sound design over the course of a year and not learn much, or you could condense it into like 3 months and become really fucking good at it. And that doesn't mean there isn't room to improve from there, because
Always.
But you're going to make so much progress in those 3 months that you will then have a very solid foundation to figure out what other nuances you should explore within that domain. And so we've talked about batching tasks before. Super, super powerful. I would, like you guys said, don't get overwhelmed. J-Fish, right? K-Fish, sorry, my man. K-Fish. Don't get overwhelmed, man. We're still going through the exact same stuff. The deeper you get into this, the more nuanced you learn how nuanced things are. And so really focusing on those tasks. I would also say, if you're doing timers for specific things, like you want to learn how to make buildups better or better hooks or better drums or whatever, run these timers and save what you can to your template library, or think of a methodical sort of sequence to put up in your noggin as far as workflow. Those three are the holy trinity, I would say. Template, library, workflow. There's nothing wrong with having 2 methodical ways to make hooks or buildups or whatever. And as you expand on your very linear, methodical approaches, you will then know 5 ways to make an intro and 4 ways to make a verse. And then they will sort of muddle up together, and you'll start finding ways to like combine and like twist these linear paths into each other. You want to make sure that you have some sort of linear process that you can get yourself into flow state with. And over time, your subconscious will find ways to twist and mangle these various methods to the point where it just becomes a pool of inspiration rather than linear paths. You will have this pool of inspiration you can just reach into and find some sort of combination of those 4 ways to make an intro and 3 ways to make a verse and 7 ways to, not even 2 ways to make a hook and whatever. You quickly realize that there's so many combinations in which you could apply those very methodical approaches to, and there's so many variables within that I would just say, even if you have one way to do everything, watch a tutorial, write out a list, make it into a timer, rinse, repeat. As you get faster at it, you'll free up more mental RAM, and you can start adding little steps. Maybe your drums go from kick, snare, hi-hats, crash to now you can do those 4 in like a couple minutes, a fraction of the time it used to take you. And now you can start incorporating things into your timer like reverse swooshes and textures and articulations in certain hits and velocity stuff. And you'll find more niche aspects of like what you can incorporate into those smaller components of your song, and they'll just get more detailed from there. And yeah, I could go on about that all
Yeah,
day, but that's
man.
the gist of it. Workflow, library, template. Find a way to incorporate your timers into one of those three.
Shout out K-Fish for asking such a good question that you got all of us going seriously rabbit hole deep to answer it, because we were already talking about it.
Yeah, man. And so one thing I'm loving about what you're saying here, like the library organization, having the templates, having these processes. One thing it keeps coming up in my sessions this month. I've been telling people like, okay, yeah, you're worried about how many songs you're building, but I want you to stop that right now. Stop worrying about how many songs you finished or what a finished song even means. I want you to build these two machines that are going to help you. You're going to need a song starting machine and a song finishing machine. The song starting machine is a well-organized library, a whole bunch of racks that you've made where you went through that library and you decided that you could, like these 8 kicks and these 8 snares are absolutely killer, and I'm going to put them on a rack and save it as like awesome kicks and snares. And then do that with hi-hats, and then put your favorite 808s on samplers so you can play them on the keyboard. And these things will all now be drag and drop, and they will save you so much time searching for sounds when you're in the middle of a writing process. And you can drag and drop those sounds all together and save that as a song starting template in your DAW. Like you open this one session and it's got every sound you could possibly need to start a song. Plus you have a very well organized set of folders in your library that have all the sounds that you would need to, like, oh, well, where are my downlifters? Oh, they're all in this folder. And now I can just click through them until I find one that I like the sound of that fits this drop. And then build your song finishing machine, like using some sort of bussing template, like the Skrillex, bussing template we talk about, or something that is your process for getting through a mix as best as you know how to get the best results you know how in the least amount of time. And then, like you said, rinse, repeat. Make the shitty songs. Even if you don't think this is the best idea, start with that song, go through the song starting machine with that idea, run it through all the way through the arrangement, put that into your song finishing machine, run it through your buses and your limiters and everything that you best know how, and get the best thing you can today, and then move on. And run that a lot of times, because it doesn't matter. Like if you can finish the best song in 1,000,000 hours, it doesn't matter. You don't have time for a follow-up song. Like it's better to make 100 songs and then figure out which 5 of them you care about enough to go back to. Now that you've run 100 songs through the song finishing machine, you've learned so much that you can jump back in and be like, okay, now I actually know how to finish this song from 75 songs ago.
I love that you said machine, because that is exactly how I think of it. Like a machine or a framework or something consistent that will always get me 90% of the way there. And there are variables, of course, for every song that are going to slightly switch up the inner workings of that machine. But when you get to that point where you have that methodical process, I feel like people are hesitant to make their approach very methodical. But the thing is, when you have that, when you could start a song tonight, well, it's COVID times now, but it feels good to know if I had a show tonight, I could start something right now and get it to a playable state where it'll bang on a system, and I can replicate that consistently every single time. I can get something to CD quality or Spotify quality every single time. Now you're truly creative, because you have this framework to work within, and you just input your ideas into, and you know it'll be mixed right. You know that the ideas of the song will come through clearly. And so you can ignore all of the nerdy technical producer stuff, and you can actually just fully be a creative in the moment.
Yeah, Luke, I like that you mentioned also like smaller batches of things. Like Tesko, I like the concept of the machine, like you highlighted as well, that Luke talked about. But one of the things that I've really been focusing on lately is like, rather than use a 128, which is a very powerful tool to have a bunch of samples at your disposal, instead I'm going to take like my 8, for example, favorite recent sounds that I've been using, and like use those as my starting place for like what I'm going to use in the drop. You know, if I just made this sound and it worked in this other work in progress, but I think it could be used better or whatever, like even just throw the same sound in there and change it a little bit. Like if you're constantly working with your small, absolute best of favorites and iterating on those, I always feel like that lands me in like my next favorite bass sound or whatever. Sometimes I feel like if I just have a giant list of presets, like I know in the back of my head, there's some that I love, some that I don't love. It's the same thing with a 128. If I make a 128 of kicks, I know that sample 48 I love, and I know that sample 51 is kind of okay. I've never used that one, you know, like having a smaller batch of like my best of, at least for me, is more inspiring to work with, because then I'm, you know, continuing to iterate on the best of rather than taking that okay thing and spending the same time that I would make something amazing into something ridiculous, spending that same amount of time making something that was good into something great, right? Like it's way more inspiring for me to work with a smaller batch of things and continue to push those forward, you know?
I want to ask you too, Evan, just for perspective, because I would say you've gotten very good at sound design. If I told you, or if I ask you rather, how limited would you feel by the sounds you could create if all I said was use only basic shapes, a high pass notch filter, and a Combs filter for the next month? Everything else you could change. How do you feel about that? You think you could still like generate enough sounds to make each song unique?
So I only get basic shapes.
Only basic shapes.
I get distortion?
Everything else is tweakable.
Oh,
you limit your wavetables, limit your filter.
Are you kidding me? That's like all I use anyways. Yes,
right.
Definitely.
Even if you were just going in and FMing a saw wave to a saw wave and use the same filter every time.
You secretly just unlocked like the sound design tip that almost no one understands. Stop fucking with those ridiculous wavetables. They do work, but they have such a specific tone that you're unable to process them in an interesting way. Start with the basic shit and then go ham on the processing. Like, you're able, this is something that I like spent like a little bit of time talking about my weekly download, because I'm super passionate about. If you can take that simple sound and use that sound and process it in a creative way, it is going to connect with the listener way more. It is going to translate your songwriting way more. It's going to be an effective, efficient, like it's going to seem clearer. It's not going to have these weird tonality issues. Like, yeah, for like screechy dubstep, like use whatever reverb filter, rhythm bass. It doesn't matter what the tonality is. But if you're doing anything that's like playing, I mean, it does a little bit, but it's more atonal, right? It's more about, fired. It's not a shot fired. It's way more atonal than like a glitch mob track that might be considered dubstep, right? So if you're trying to do something that has more melodic songwriting involved in your heavy distorted basses, start with simpler sounds and go ham on those, because that will yield something that will translate in a melodic sense, something that I have been doing a lot and I really like.
So this brings us right to the other question that I had queued up. Big shouts to Josh T. He asked us, he said he's been struggling with over-processing his sounds and knowing when to stop or try something else. He feels like he can go forever with processing sounds. So, I mean, real quick, to break that question down, it's more like, so what are some good practices for knowing how to process sounds, and what are some good rules of thumb to know when you're over processing your sounds and when to just stop already?
I got a passionate rant coming, so Evan, take this shit away.
Nice. Okay, so you know when to stop when you run out of assignable slots in Serum to do any more automations. That literally just started happening to me in like the past 3 weeks. This has happened to me like 4 times, and that is a definite indication. You probably don't need any more. You probably don't need it. And most of those are because I'm automating other things. It doesn't matter. That is a good indication. But really, for me, did you add something that made the sound worse? Yeah. Okay. You're done. Just go back to the thing that you liked. You know, do you like it yet? No. Keep going. Did you make some stuff that made it worse? Take that off and leave it. You know, that's really like the biggest, just fucking cut and dry for me. Rant away. Rant and get.
I love that, and I love that you said that, and I think there's something I want to just add to that as a preliminary to exactly what you said. But I think there's this overemphasis on like more processing will make it sound better. Just keep adding more and more and more till it sounds good. But I really, really, really want to emphasize on dialing in those fundamentals. And like, I want you to think more about, is the filter cut off at 47 or 49? Or can this LFO be like 3 milliseconds shorter? Or what about this FM value? Can it be like 1 notch up or down? Like really dialing in those fundamentals, because the thing is, you have to get that sound actually building up frequencies in the right sort of sections and then filtering out all the garbage properly. And you will hear, if you spend some time, have a few sessions at first where you just spend an hour going in on like moving this filter and then adjusting the FM once you start to hear a pure focused tone to the sound, tweaking other parameters, switching up when the sound ends to fit it in the pocket, switching to another basic shape wavetable, making sure that there is actually some sort of character to this marble that you're going to be sculpting away at. When you start distorting the sound, when you start adding another filter to it, when you start doing all this crazy shit, if there is a solid fundamental to work with, it is going to take you so much farther. And so I want you to hyper focus not on the post-processing, but on those minute details, like how the sound fits in the pocket. Like, can that LFO be more curved or more like concave? Can it end a bit shorter, or can it be dragged out a bit longer? Does it need more of like a sudden concave attack, or can it have more of a rounded attack? Do I need a low pass 12 filter, or do I need a low pass 18 filter? You know, like, or a band pass. Like, really get those fundamentals dialed in, and you'll find you can add way more post-processing on after if that's what you want, because there is a actual focus thing to the sound. I find people think that crazy wavetable A, FM to crazy wavetable B, and then I know a growly filter goes roughly here, or I know a plucky sound has roughly this filter. Like, fuck roughly, get that shit super dialed in, and basic shapes will take you so much further than the craziest wavetables, because what people end up getting most of the time is like all of this crazy convoluted messy high end, which they then start distorting, and then it turns into basically like white noise by the end of their basic processing, and then they're wondering why additional processing isn't taking that sound further. Like, I cannot stress enough how important it is to focus on like I said, is the filter at 47 or 49, or can it be at like 48? And can this FM value be like up or down one notch? That is the gem that nobody's going to talk about on YouTube because it's not cool. As soon as you start focusing on that, your shit will skyrocket to the next level. I promise you, guaranteed.
I love it.
Rant done.
I absolutely love it, man. And I love that this, like, you guys really put out some points that I quickly touched on in my reply message. The main one being, you know, make sure you're starting your sound design sessions with good sounds. Because if you go in like garbage in, garbage out, if you go in with a noisy, weird sound, or if you're reprocessing a piece of audio that already has weird artifacts and aliasing in it, like, you are just building a house on shaky foundations. If you start with, like you said, something with a really good fundamental sound where this note and this tone and this character are shining through clearly, and then run a Mudpie where it's like, oh, I wonder what happens if I really crank the delay and really crank the distortion on this really great sound. Whereas if it's a mediocre sound and we're just trying to sprinkle salt base and flavor on a piece of shit, like, it's still going to be a turd on the other end. It's just going to be a highly processed piece of shit.
It's going to be a salted turd. It's not going to taste good. It's just not.
It's worth noting too. Sorry, Evan, go for it.
No, dude, you go for it. I was
just going to say, I had a huge breakthrough when I realized that most of my favorite sound design was not made purely within the synth. When I realized how much artists rely on happy accidents and chaos creating plugins where they can take a fundamentally solid sound and start throwing it into these like randomized parameters on glitch plugins and like start stretching the audio and doing all this crazy shit. Your favorite artist doesn't hear this like crazy sound in their head and then they recreate it perfectly from scratch. They start with something basic and reliable that they know will get 80% of their idea across. And then as you start going through this Mudpie process, which basically, if you're not familiar, is just a long resampling session where you're recording as you're tweaking parameters, you're going to get all these happy accidents that you just never could have accounted for or planned for. I don't care if you've got 99 LFOs in your synth and all the parameters in the world available to you, you never would be able to create this sound or even conceive of this sound in your head to make it. Start simple and start using chaos to your advantage. Create more material than you need. 90% of it's going to be garbage. Follow that Pareto's principle where you generate 100 variations on that sound to find that like to find those like 5 variations that are just like out of this world cool that are going to make your track stand out.
Yeah, 100%. Quick, like, small specific tip on doing Mudpies. Use an LFO that's not on beat sync. Turn it to like real slow, like 0.05 hertz, and just draw a bunch of weird shit on there. Like, make a big like plucky shape and then make like a big boob shape. I don't know how else to describe it. And then make like some like do kind of shapes, and then like just go ham with like random shapes, and then like assign that parameter to all the same things that you would do for like a dubstep wub or a dubstep growl or something like that. Assign that to all of those, and then a couple other weird ones as well, and then like just let it play through. And then since it's on not beat sync mode, you can adjust the rate at which it plays through that as you're doing your Mudpie, and it's not going to skip around. It's just going to get faster or slower. And all of those weird shapes that you had no idea what we're going to do before create some really cool, unexpected results as you start to move that faster and slower. And that's just one thing that I frequently find myself doing that I like a lot and feel like could help you guys. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I wanted to bring up in that, man, I love that one, by the way. Setting up a non-linear bit of motion that's not going to hit at the same time as you loop through this MIDI, this MIDI line that you've got repeated out for your 3 minutes of madness. And because a Mudpie without motion isn't going to do much for you. Like if it's just a note and you're like, oh, now it's like kind of fuzzy, and now it's like not as fuzzy, and now it's like really fuzzy. It's like, okay, neat, but if it's got this motion where things are like turning way up and then back down, and then whole sections of it are rolling with these changes, that's going to get you a lot more happy accidents. And then what I wanted to talk about is sometimes like we want to add the most complicated possible ways of doing this. Like if I throw these 9 plugins on, I turn them all up to the max, a lot of the times that, in my experience, gets me that kind of like way too fuzzy, over aliased, over artifact, like kind of synth soup noise. Whereas if I start with like I've done ones where I started with a good stock pluck patch, and then literally the only thing I did for my Mudpie was tweak the delay time. And like just, and it just like did all these weird things. And then I was like, all right, I have enough in this one pass of one drop to do all of the weird little extras I need to for the sound for the entire song. And, oh yeah, this little bit would be great to fill that hole. And I'm going to replace that note with this trippy one that kind of reverses into itself. And then chop, 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 the shit's pretty much done. By picking one good sound and doing one reliable type of Mudpie articulation to it, finished the whole song. Whereas other times I've been like, yeah, I'm going to get so cerebral. I'm going to make all these cool stacks and it sounds like shit.
It's so true. It's so true. Keep it simple.
Stupid simple.
Yeah, I was wondering if that would be inflammatory.
We've said way worse.
You're right. You're definitely right. No, but I love that you mentioned delay time too. I think like you want some G. Jones fucking otherworldly stuff. Straight up put 10 delays on the track and macro the delay time to one knob and just play with that one knob. I'm dead serious. Please go try it right now. If you like G. Jones, go put it on your drum track, all your drums, and play with that one knob and write a comment thanking me later. It is so underrated, just fucking stacking some delays and making that delay time go crazy. Yeah.
Dude, that right there leads to a whole nother amazing can of worms. Okay, neat. We can Mudpie on this one instrument in a vacuum, but you can totally Mudpie on your master track, resample your entire master bus back into the song with some crazy effects on it and see how, because there's no way you were going to think that up. What if these 9 sounds were all hitting at this one moment of the song and it got this weird delay into a distortion, and then I like hit the pitch bend knob and then oh my God, that's ill. I'm definitely including that 9 times in this song. I'm rewriting my drop for that sound.
For real. I also want to really emphasize, if you're in that stage where you're very precious about MIDI and keeping everything in the synth still, and you're not comfortable working with audio, spend the next month really getting to know all of the different audio mangling parameters within your DAW, and you will have more breakthroughs than you've had in the last few months just by just by doing that, and you'll realize how powerful this idea of serendipitous accidents, like you said, Luke, where you create a sound that you end up rewriting your whole drop or song for because it's just that dope. That's really how to approach your writing sessions. Take the pressure off yourself and realize that you don't have to write these crazy parts by yourself. Just do something that you're comfortable with. Push your comfort, not even that, but just do something that you know will work. Start with that solid foundation and then go full chaos mode. Resample your drums, crazy delays, resample your master, stretch it to 999 BPM, pitch it up 17, and then resample that and pitch it down 14. And
automate the grain size and the flux.
Yeah.
As you turn it to 999 and pitch it all the way down minus 48.
Yeah, aliasing is really cool too. Aliasing is like when your DAW tries to like compensate for all of this information that it got from you doing like really crazy obscure things to the sound. Like if you pitch it down way past this range, there's all these like supersonic frequencies or whatever that you can't hear, that's like at 40K or whatever, that it's going to like interpolate and then pitch down into audible range based on the actions that you did, and then it's going to start creating all these like crazy sounds based on whatever mathematical formulas it just pushed that sound through and the numbers it got back. So get crazy with it, get destructive with it. That's the thing too. Like, don't be afraid to commit this sound a bunch of times as you start doing all these tweaks. Commit destructively sound design.
But also like just make a duplication and then destroy that one. Like you can always go back.
Yeah.
Who asked that original question?
That was the good homie Josh T.
Shout out Josh T.
Shout out Josh T, dude. Both those questions.
Yeah, K-Fish and Josh T, thanks for the listener questions.
Y'all just like really sparked some shit that I don't know that we would have talked about by ourselves. That was nice. There's some good tidbits in there. Collaborative effort, happy accidents, you know? Happy accidents, people. Give yourself the most chance for random, unexpected results, especially when doing a Mudpie. Give yourself just the greatest abundance of shit that you never thought would happen, and you will find your favorite sounds.
And then take those and run them through your song starting machine and then into your song finishing machine.
And save them to your library.
Yeah. And, man, one thing I think we should close on is a very important thing for me, and that is stop being afraid of writing shitty songs. Especially when you're starting out, but at any time, like there is this, oh man, you know, I don't want to like do the wrong thing. And what if this song isn't good, but I spent all my time like working on it? What if my sound design wasn't dope? It's like the more you just write songs, the faster you get at writing songs, the more you understand these machines you're building, the better you're able to use the machines you're building. And then the less precious you become with each song too, which is exponentially helpful. You start to get away from this, like, oh, is this the one? And you're like, nope, this is one of thousands, and I'm going to bang it out because I'm already in the middle of it, and get it to the point where it's a full song, a full draft, where you can bounce it and show it to anybody else or listen to it in any other room than this one. And then like, okay, cool, it's out there. Is it sick? Cool, let me keep working on it, make it as sick as I can and put it out. Is it all right? Cool, let me let it sit while I do a whole bunch more songs. But just like make the shitty ones, y'all.
It's so true, because if you're afraid to make the shitty ones, and I'm talking to literally myself right now, if you're afraid to make the shitty ones, you will have anxiety to open your DAW when you know you have a day to write new music or whatever. You're like, or even if I just have 2 hours to work on that new one that like I'm pretty sure is like my best song I've ever made. Stop thinking that. That's just fucking you up. Because then when you have 2 hours to work on mixing it, you're like, oh, but I'm kind of tired. I don't want to like ruin it because it's like my favorite. That shit's gonna fuck you up. That shit fucks me up daily. Like you make something that you really love and you have to detach from it because otherwise you're gonna have this weird like inability to finish it. And it's the same thing with like working on any new music, and everyone feels like some sort of weird anxiety or pressure to enter the DAW because you know that you might make a piece of shit. You know that that's a possibility, and so you're afraid of making a piece of shit. We're all afraid of making pieces of shit, and we all make pieces of shit. But you know what happens when you make enough pieces of shit? Sometimes you don't make a piece of shit, and then you're really happy about that. It's the same thing. Like, it's so funny how universal this concept is. Like, I've been spending a lot of time recently, like that 15 minutes that I used to spend working on sound design. Now I'm spending that 15 minutes trying to get better at playing guitar so I can actually play some more intricate parts in my songs, because I'm a very average, probably below average guitar player that can produce my way into something that sounds all right. I want to be able to play something intricate and cool. So I'm spending that 15 minutes getting better at guitar. And you know what happens? I sit down to do that 15 minutes on guitar, and I know how dialed in I was on that one fucking part that I was practicing all yesterday, and I get the anxiety that right now I don't think I'm going to be able to play that part because that sounds hard, and I knew that it was hard yesterday, and god damn it, that is a terrible way to approach it. It's not helpful. Get over it. Yeah, maybe you will fucking flat out fall on your face trying to play that guitar part. Who fucking cares? Who fucking cares? You might make a piece of shit. Who fucking cares? You didn't release the piece of shit on Spotify. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I have to remind myself this daily. I'm sure you two do too, and the rest of you listening at home. It is okay. Just do the thing. Is way better to just reduce your anxiety of doing the thing down to zero, and then just do it. It's the same thing. Not to continue this rant further than it needs to go, because I'm definitely in a rant state of mind right now. I was having a conversation with a student who has trouble finishing music. Straight up, no questions asked, has trouble finishing music. And he always gets to a point where he makes something good, and then he just doesn't really want to mix it down because it's like, I don't want to finish it, because there's the anxiety of finishing something that you like. And one of the biggest things that I've had issues with that I was able to convey to him to greatly relieve the stress is when you're working on mixing a record, every action that you make doesn't have to lead to the perfect sounding thing. All you're trying to do is objectively use your tools to move that thing, whether it be your kick drum, your snare drum, a little bit closer to great sounding. How do you know what sounds great? Use a reference. How do you know what do you want this thing to sound like? Listen to your favorite artist that is making something similar. There you go. How do you get closer to that? Use the tools that you know how to use to get iteratively closer to that thing. You made a change. Is it better? No? That's fine. Take that thing off. Try something else. Is that better? Yeah? Great. Is it a little bit closer to what you're trying to do? Great. Stop thinking about the pressure of making it perfect on every iterative step, and just use your tools. Use your tools. Is it making it better? No? Okay. Different tool. Is that making it better? A little bit? Great. Fucking, that's all you have to do. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. Just get as close as you can, and that's fine. And then you're done with it and make the next one,
Facts.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up here, I just want to quickly, and I love that you guys brought this up, I want to shout out Ultimate Guitar forums. Way back in the day, there was a thread that I remember contributing to a handful of times.
Sponsorship dollars from these people?
We should get some sponsor schmeckles. But
sponsor us, please.
25 schmeckles per shout out.
So there was a thread on there that I loved. We used to get on there and write metal using Guitar Pro 5. Those were the simple times, man. But there was a thread on there, which is the best way to overcome writer's block. and I always tell my students this. I remember there was a thread, it was a collaborative thread where we throw on this guitar profile and we'd all like tack on a riff, and the goal was to make the shittiest song ever conceived in human existence. I remember like once taking like the Jingle Bells melody and then like harmonizing it with the same shit one semitone above to make it sound like super ass, and then I would like play it the heaviest breakdown over it, and that shit got a good reaction because it's fun and it's you let loose and you don't care. And I love that thread. I love those shitty fucking songs we made. And one thing I always tell people is like, if you don't know where to go with your song, if you don't know what you want to make, duplicate the project or take whatever you got and just do a dog shit remix or do like the worst song imaginable. Do everything you think will sound absolutely horrible. And I guarantee you will take away one thing from that session that you could apply to a proper context.
Dude, that is legitimately something I've never heard before.
The best.
Fucking love that. What is more fun than doubling down on trying to make something dog shit that's going to make you laugh? All that's going to do is put you in a good mood, and you're probably going to learn some things trying to break your tools that are actually going to be cool and interesting to use in an acceptable way on something else. I fucking love that.
I love it too. It reminds me of being in like group songwriting, like lyric writing sessions that I've been in. And, you know, everybody's like, okay, yo, we got to get this line. And, yo, it's so serious. We're all serious. And like, I could feel everybody getting stuck. And so I'll just say the dumbest, cheesiest pun of a line that pops into my head just to break the tension and make everybody laugh for a second. And everybody's like, oh shit, that's so stupid. But half the time that either sparks like a new line of thought that people are like, oh wait, I know that's not it, but like if we kind of follow that line of thought in that direction, we'll find the line. And every once in a while people are like, oh, that's just dumb enough to be perfect right here. I'm writing it down. I'm like, I did not expect that, but I will accept it.
Give my royalties now.
Yeah, right.
I think that comes from the same place too as like when we were talking about how you could be in the shower driving to work or whatever. It comes from a place of vulnerability, letting your guard down. And there's a quote from like Game of Thrones where Tyrion, I don't know if you guys have seen it, he's like the dwarf. He's always got like picked on it in his life, right? And he talks to one of the bastards from the family because that was a very like low social status to be at, and he tells him like, don't let it get you down. The world is never going to let you forget what you are, so wear it like armor. And I think applying sort of that same idea in that context, if you feel like you're going to write a turd of a song or things are not turning out, take that into your own hands and be like, I thought I was going to write a bad song. I'm going to write the worst song possible that I can think of.
I love it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the cure to writer's block.
Write shitty music, the shittiest music you possibly can.
Release it on Spotify.
The Human Music Podcast. We explain all the best ways to make your music even shittier.
Come back next week for more advice.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, it'll help. It'll help. It'll definitely help. It might not.
Gems for real, though.
Yeah, actually.
Peace out, y'all.
Peace.
I like it.
What's up, humans? It's Luke, your friendly neighborhood trap Jesus. Thank you so much for watching our videos. We appreciate you. Remember to like and subscribe to our channels. And if you have any questions or topics that we need to cover on the show, put them in the comments. Appreciate you. Peace and peace among worlds.